I grew up in a suburban part of a small city in Coimbatore. And I got a chance scholarship to go to Singapore to pursue my undergrad degree. Like most parents do, they said, figure out what's the best thing that people do in Singapore. And I said, the best thing people do is banking. And my parents were like, go, do that. It was a highly competitive thing to do. Everyone decided to become a banker. And I just decided to join the race. I worked through multiple internships, worked through the weekends, so much that I wanted to get a job badly before I graduated. And I did, with a pre-placement offer with one of the prestigious investment firms. Life was great, except it was September 2008. The financial meltdown had just begun, and the company that had offered me the job was about to collapse. And they rescinded the offer. I was crushed. Around the same time, I was reading this book called Creating a World Without Poverty and the Future of Capitalism. Just to set the record straight, I wasn't interested in creating a world without poverty. I was like, many people have come before and talked about creating a world without poverty. What's new in it? But I was more interested about what is a man from Bangladesh, Dr. Mohammed Yunus, got to talk about the future of capitalism. So he writes about this initiative, which has been around for 35 years, where they provide tiny loans to women with no education, no collateral whatsoever, to start small businesses so that they can move their children and their families out of poverty. And the movement had reached 8 million families over a period of time. I was floundered. I said, this is what I want to do. Apply what I have learned so far into doing something that is challenging. So I decided to drop out of the college, or rather take a sabbatical. So I went and told my dad, Dad, I'm dropping out of college. We decided to have a deal within us, and I took the next 1 year off from school. Except that I didn't know what I wanted to do, except change the world. I cold called a number of organizations in India saying that I want to come and work in the grassroots, like most 21-year-olds do. Finally, I managed to get an offer from an organization that was run by 2 Americans. And they said, look, we are impressed by your enthusiasm. The only prerequisite for this job is that you be fluent in 2 languages, Telugu and Hindi, languages that I barely understood. But like most self-respecting Indians do, I said I'm fluent in both, and I'm ready for the job. And so began my journey in the space. My job was essentially to travel across India and talk to these women who have got these loans and understand what the impact has been of these loans. Are they making a difference? Are they pushing them further down? What is it? And my journey took me to places that most people wouldn't have even heard of, in the Northeast, in West Bengal, and Rajasthan, and so on. And that's the first time I came face to face with what poverty and being poor means. Now, the moment I said poverty, we have had some kind of preconceived notions and stereotypes about that. The poor are crippled, the poor need our sympathy, the poor are lazy, the poor are dependent, and so on. But the kind of people that I met were different from what I was seeing on the ground. They were entrepreneurial, they were resilient, they had high hopes for themselves and their children, and they were funky, they were fun, they were happy, they were just leading a peaceful life like most of us. And that was the first learning that I had. But having said that, what I also realized along the way was that the system had failed in a large way. Now here is one of my clients, Mrs. Jana. She is from Balangir, Orissa, an artisan who doesn't have access to electricity. Now we would say, look, millions of people in this country don't have access to electricity. This is because there are challenges and so on. But what was funny was her village was just a kilometer away from the largest power station in Orissa, which was giving power to Chhattisgarh, West Bengal, and parts of Jharkhand. The system had failed people like her. This is a representative picture of one of our clients who uses these two jerry cans to fetch water as well as kerosene, because these are the most precious commodities in rural India. Imagine using the same jerry can that you used for kerosene to fetch water. Such is life. And 90% of the diseases that you face in rural India are because of two things: access to clean water and safe sanitation. It wasn't just about access. This also had something to do with awareness. This is a place in Tamil Nadu, Musiri, where the family has a TV, a DTH connection, as you can see, but they don't have access to clean water or a toilet. So I was curious. I was like, how do you have a TV and a DTH but not a toilet? And they said, look, I got the TV for free in the last election. I was like, awesome. How did you manage to get the DTH connection? She said, look, there was a subsidy to build a toilet, but that subsidy was only for 1,600 rupees. Now you tell me, how can someone build a toilet with 1,600 rupees? And we already have a TV, and a DTH costs only 1,500 rupees. So why not buy the DTH, right? So it wasn't just about access, it's also about awareness and how the entire system worked. Top-down solutions had failed. But what I also realized along the way was there were small number of solutions built bottom-up from grassroots, from people who wanted to take charge of their own lives. This is a solar panel locally installed by electricians in West Bengal because they don't have access to power, so that artisans and tailors can work at night, children can study at night. And it just costs around $25 or 1,200 rupees. This is a local entrepreneur in Dharwad and Hubli. These guys are semi-literate. One guy has passed just class 8. These two guys are entrepreneurs who are running a reverse osmosis plant. Sounds funky, but very simple for these guys. And selling water to their villages at 10 paise per liter. They're not looking for a top-down solution. They're not looking for a big NGO. They have just figured out how to do it on themselves. And where awareness is an issue, women have formed groups and built awareness grassroots. This is one of the movements that happens every year during this week, which is the World Sanitation Day, where women form long groups and tell what's the right way to defecate and what's not the right way to defecate. Things like this inspire you. And I was wondering, what can we do to replicate these things, incredible things happening in small pockets across India? Is it even possible to replicate? And my learning along the way was, yes, it is possible. And there are a number of organizations working on the ground tirelessly focusing on these innovations. But what was the challenge? The challenge was access to capital, access to small, tiny amounts of capital that can make or break. I'm talking about amounts like 5,000, 10,000 rupees to bring lighting to a family of 10. How about we reinvent the concept of charity? Apply the principles, because charity alleviates an immediate suffering, but there is never going to be an end of suffering in this world. What we need is to build sustainable ways of doing the same. The other thing that we learned was to build personal connection. A lot of things has been about big problems, big issues, big diseases and stuff. We said, why don't we narrow it down to the last mile and talk about this particular person's, this particular need, and this particular cause, and this would be the impact. Build that personal connection so that people can understand what their small amounts of money could do. And when you do that, it doesn't just become giving, it becomes what we call engaged giving. And there were 4 principles around it. We said 100% of the money that people give will go to the end person that they want to help. So much as to that we would absorb the credit card or the debit card fees that they would pay online. Now, the only organization that has done so far is in the US, which is a Robin Hood Foundation, because they are big guys and stuff. But we said, this is the way to build transparency. The second one was, we wanted to build proof. You put in $25, I'm not going to call you on your next birthday and say, hey, why don't you give $25? You gave me the last year. We are going to tell you real time, use the principles of something as simple as GPS. Just use that to monitor where exactly the money goes, so that if somebody wants to go to that particular place, they're free to go and see their actual impact. The third one was democratize it. A lot of people discouraged us from doing this. They said, why are you trying to build this platform and expect people to give? Indians are stingy guys. They're never going to give. They have their own issues of giving. They'll only give to charities and temples. And we took a step back and we said, 10 years ago, a site came into existence that changed the way India traveled. Make My Trip. 5 years ago, a site came into existence that changed the way India is shopping. Flipkart. Why can't we apply the same principles of for-profit approaches to something that is inefficient at this point in time, which is giving? Change the way India thinks about giving. And finally, we wanted to build a brand. Now, when it came to give everyone, what we said was, let's democratize this entire process. Let's open source the platform so that people can build their own mini versions of Milaap and choose the cause and raise and monitor and see the impact. And the moment we started doing it, people started running marathons, some started climbing mountains, cycling, baking, 1-year-olds dedicating their birthdays, weddings, campuses dedicating their cultural fests, and so on. This is a ridiculous example in a popular consulting firm where the partner actually auctioned to give a body massage to the highest bidder, and that raised $5,000. And the final one was we wanted to build a brand. Now, brand is such a dirty word in not-for-profit space. But this is what Nicholas Kristof says, the New York Times writer. The most insignificant toothpaste in this world has a bigger brand than the biggest world-fighting, disease-fighting organization. And that's true. If I were to ask you, name me 5 organizations of toothpastes, 5 brands, you would be able to answer. Now, if I ask you, tell me 5 organizations that work in the space of water, clean water for the poor, we wouldn't. And it's not our fault. It's our fault, people in this sector, because we haven't built a brand for this. We wanted to build a brand. So we started in June 2010, called in friends, and we raised $5,000. This was the pre-event, and then we went. It was essentially an event in a bar. Most people did not realize what they were paying for, except that they said, okay, it's a good event, so go ahead. And we did a pilot, and after 6 months, we said, hey, your money has come back. And they were like, what money? And I was like, remember, we went binge drinking at that bar. That money actually went to, give clean water to these guys. And they were like, this is awesome. And that's what we wanted to do. Now, over a period of 2 years, we have impacted 15,000 lives across 10 states in India. Now, 15,000 lives is like a golf clap in this country. This is a country of 1 billion people. If you were to impact and have a significant impact, you need to impact at least 1 million lives. And that would be possible only if you think big. A couple of things that we have learned along the way is guilt versus opportunity. A lot of fundraising, a lot of asking has been built around guilt. So we have this really cool marketing guys in our team who actually wait for popular memes to happen. So last year when there was a viral hit, Kolaveridi, we said, why don't we apply the lyrics of Kolaveridi to talk about causes? So this is one of the lines which essentially says, night color dark, my future is dark. Why this Kolaveridi? These kind of things resonate with the Facebook and the Twitter audience, which is essentially going to be the future. Broadcast your failure. Every time you look at it, it's all rosy, it's all great. We are all doing awesome stuff. Everything is happening. People are moving out of poverty. This is great. But that's not the scenario when it comes to working on the field. In fact, our first pilot was a failure, where instead of solar lights, because of a logistics nightmare, we ended up with PVC pipes. and we lost $5,000 in the process. So we didn't know what to do, and we decided, let's email all our lenders saying that we messed up. And we just did it. And you wouldn't understand, you wouldn't imagine the response that we got in the next 2 days. All the lenders wrote back to us, said, don't worry about it, go ahead, do it again, we'll fund you again, and we raised $10,000 in the process. Sacrifice versus choice. A lot of people who enter this sector talk about how I quit high-paying jobs to do this. This is such a sacrifice I do. I don't believe in that. You either make a choice to do it, or you don't make a choice to do it. Because if you came here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's work together. Thank you.